The freezer pond. I remember looking up from my PlayStation PSP and seeing the other three faces that were in the truck with me filled with panic. The kind of panic that you have when you know you're going to meet your maker. Today. I look around, out of every window in the truck, as it spun 1260 degrees, 3.5 times, on all four wheels, as Haas scrambled to regain control of the truck. My original trainer with the company, his name was also Andy, was sitting in the front passenger seat in front of me. He stood a whopping 5'3" tall and was about 150 pounds. Little dude, tough as nails. I saw a face full of dread in the passenger side view mirror as his hazel eyes dilated to the size of dimes in slow motion, watching the edge of the road get closer and closer, realizing that after the edge was a drop-off, about 15 feet down, to a culvert drainage pipe sticking out from under the roadway. The look in his eyes still gives me chills. As we hit the edge of the road, the tires left the ice and grabbed onto tundra, while rubber peeled the snow from the top of the vegetation and stunk into the moist terrain below. The revelation that crossed his face when his eyebrows burst towards the front of his hairline, like reaching for help, as he reached for the oh shit handle on the door frame, is where I realized I needed to look away from him and see what was going on. Jamie, my current driller, basically my immediately boss, is who these driller guys are, was sitting in the rear driver's seat across from me. He was asleep when this all started, so all this came to him as he regained consciousness from his slumber. I see his eyes open as I feel the truck tip to the driver's side. I look forward at the windshield, and I saw two headlights staring at me. The lights from the pickup that was following just a little too close behind us for the current road conditions. The front bumpers scuffed each other as our truck rolled off the road. I look back at Jamie. His eyes are fixed on the culvert pipe sticking out from the embankment on the road, watching it come closer to his face, now coming through the window. As it shatters the glass, I remember reaching out and grabbing his hoodie-covered head and pulling him toward me. I look up, which is now down, as I feel the vehicle go airborne, and my only thought is, relax, go limp. I close my eyes and prepare to die. The truck rolled over and bounced off the suspension, rolling another 1.5 times, totaling 2.5 times. We landed between the thin cedars and birch of the swampy Alaskan tundra landscape, landing upside down, breaking through the ice of a frozen pond, missing every toothpick-looking, impaling tree in the direct path of our express exit of the roadway. We were launched over a patch of trees that, if we had landed in on rotation, would have skewered us all. Time returns to normal as the ice-cold water hits the top of my head and I realize I'm upside down, alive, breathing, well, trying to, through ice, freezing, 18-degree Fahrenheit air, and frozen half-slushy water. I look over and Jamie is trying to unbuckle his seatbelt. Andy is in the front yelling something, but it was inaudible to me at this point. I was told he was trying to get my attention because we'd been stationary for a time, and they thought I was dead because I was so calm and I hadn't been moving or responding. I hear Haas screaming in pain and fear. Almost 400 pounds of flesh were pinned and trapped in the water by the roof of the truck that had caved in, pinning him so tight he couldn't move. His face was barely out of the water, and he was struggling for breath from the pressure of the truck. He was pinching his lips upward, out of a desperation to keep the air flowing into his lungs and not let his face become completely submerged. I feel the truck shake. I look forward toward the motion around me, and Andy is unbuckled and trying to kick the roof of the truck away from Haas so he can catch a breath. Haas is screaming like my sisters were in the accident as a kid. Blood curling. I feel the truck move more. I can breathe, but it's cold and wet, like I'm trying to breathe underwater. I feel something move across my face, and I reach up to feel what it was. It was the blanket we had covered the back bench seat so our street clothes didn't get dirty. Jamie had just exited his location in the truck and was working around to help Andy with opening the door to get to Haas. I vividly remember the blanket. It was soggy with pond water, smelled like rancid laundry sitting in an abandoned laundromat. It was one of those old green U.S. stamped wool blankets you can get from the military surplus stores. At that moment, I see a flash of an arm go past me and punch a little red button by my side. Splash! I'm in the water, soaked and freezing, wearing my civvies, Dickies shorts, a t-shirt, a hoodie, and a pair of Osiris skate shoes. I stand up and smash my head against the floor of the truck. I stumble out of the door I was sitting by, and Andy grabs my shoulders. "Are you deaf? Hoss is trapped. Go get a knife," he screams at me. I snap into a clearer, but still foggy mentality and look around. All of our luggage was in a nice, neat little pile, like someone had unloaded it on the side of the road for us, in the exact same order and manner we loaded it, but upside down. There's a green Chevy Silverado sitting on the shoulder, and a guy white-knuckling the steering wheel, looking straight out the windshield at what his face was describing as a ghost. I trudged up the embankment of 24 inches of snow in my Dickies shorts and skate shoes that I tactfully tied so I didn't have to tie and untie them to slip them on. I look back and realize that I travel differently now, out of habits caused from my traumas. Some of the wise decisions of our youth and the lessons we learned from them. The guy in the Chevy was still frozen in place when I got to the driver's door. I knocked, no response. I knocked louder, no response. I opened his door and asked for a knife. He just pointed to the pile of luggage. I dropped my soaking wet Google G1 slider phone in his lap, told him to call 911, and stumbled off toward the pile of bags in the snow. I dug through my bag until I found my Leatherman Wave utility knife and walked back towards the overturned wreck. Andy and Jamie were frantically, with all their weight and strength, trying to get the door open to get Hoss out. Like I said, Andy wasn't a big dude in stature. In spirit, though, he was a giant. Jamie was about as big as I am now, 175 pounds, but he was almost 6 feet tall. Between the two of them wrenching and pulling on the door, it should have been open by now. I pushed through the snow and the icy water to where they were, and stepped in between them and grabbed the door, after handing Jamie a coat and Andy the Leatherman. I grabbed the door and put my foot on the frame and pulled. At the time, I'd been working on the rigs for well over a year and a half. I'd slimmed down and gained some strength, but not as much as these two had together, with one grunt and stretch and flex of every muscle attached to the skin touching that metal. I ripped the door open. The tow truck driver, when he turned the truck over, ripped the door off the truck because it was stuck in the mud so hard. I don't know how I opened it. I've been told on numerous occasions that I have a retard strength. I call it farm muscles. I took what strength I had left, grabbed some clothes from my open bag, and walked to the Chevy that we'd nearly missed during our abrupt departure from the roadway. The driver had disassembled my phone and put it on the dash to dry out on the defroster fan. The phone still wasn't working. He did, however, snap out of his daze enough to call for help. Because most of Alaska is so remote, it is illegal to not stop when you see a disabled vehicle on the side of the road in the winter. Many have died from exposure, and it just so happens that this was a situation in which that law made sense. We had no cell service, but he was able to radio his dispatch to call for help with a Motorola handheld radio he had in the truck from his last shift at work. Everyone walked away from that accident. The follow-up injuries at the hotel and airport are another story in itself. The worst injury from the rollover was a cut Hoss got on his cheek from the tempered window glass exploding inward when we hit the drainage culvert.